now we have set up Windows. We have everything. Don't worry, here on the side, they don't really work. They are just on the OneDrive, I guess. The first thing we have to do, because I have two screens, is to go onto the settings, find the screen, not here, but I think it is on the same page, on the system page, display, and then we can move around the displays. And right now, if we apply it, we can move the first screen to the second screen. However, what you don't see right now in the recording, they are not perfect, so you need to readjust the second screen perfectly. So the transformation from the pointer from the first to the second screen is perfect, but it seems like it kind of works right now, so we'll keep it. Next, we'll set up the night colors at night to turn off on at night. So it will turn off at 5 a.m. or like, yeah, 1 a.m. We don't use the PC at night, and turn on at 10 p.m. when I want to go to bed, or maybe even at 9:30 because I want to go to bed at 9:30. Nice. The strength we'll tune not that high, of course. This is a bit drastic, but I think 50 is good. Next, we'll go into the system and adjust all settings. But before that, we have to debloat Windows. So first we'll have to close a bunch of stuff right here because that is my extensions. And Google Windows debloat and go onto this GitHub repository. It has to say Refhire here from Refhire. Then we go onto code and download the zip file. Very important. Then we open our Explorer, go onto downloads, extract it here, open it, and click on the run thing. Run. Then a terminal will open up. We have to give it access as an administrator. And there is multiple options. Option 1 is the most I'd say you should do. There's also option 2, which will give you more customizability on what actually gets removed. And option 3 is for just removing other apps, not fiddling with the settings. But we obviously want Windows fully debloated, so we enter in 1, and a bunch of stuff will be removed. So then I think here we should enter 2 if we know which apps are meant. Normally you can enter in 1. So we want AGC Media Player, Active Pro Software LLC. We don't need all of that. We don't need that, not that. There's a lot of software we don't need that is just bloatware. It doesn't mean that we have it installed, but Microsoft likes to spam us with a lot of software like Mixed Reality or whatever. Microsoft Paint we of course want to keep. Same goes for Microsoft OneDrive and Microsoft People. Microsoft Remote Desktop and Screen Sketch is also important. Same goes for Microsoft Whiteboard and Microsoft Windows Photos, stuff like that. The rest we don't need. Confirm, and all of them have been removed. Nice. We'll execute it, and it will delete all of the bloatware and make our PC hopefully run faster because of the background stuff that appears. We can press any key to exit this. We can close down this. And basically we don't need the debloater anymore, so we can also delete everything here. Now, what do we need to do next? We'll need to go through the settings one by one. I'll show you everything there is. Also, I can make a bunch of other videos from this. So, first, we'll go into the home. What is here? Personalize your device and so on. We don't need all of that right now. You can set up the cloud storage here or buy the Microsoft 365 plan. Currently, I have another plan. I have the normal plan. Weirdly, it displays here that it expired, but it didn't actually do that. Then we'll go into system. First, the displays. We already did this. We did this. For presentations, make this my main display. This is the main display right now. And the display capture, of course, changed when pressing this. Now, the other stuff we can leave like this. The night light, I'd suggested actually, because you don't want to perceive that much blue light in the evening. It messes with your brain and your sleep quality. Your color profile is not that important. It is only for people with really high-end monitors. The HDR we don't need, because what it does is give you a brighter and more vibrant picture for high dynamic ranged games, videos and apps. For example, like this, it is not that much of a difference, but I would say not to turn it on because it uses some processing power. And then you can set the scale right here. I'd always set it at 100%. You can set it to a higher number. For example, if you have a 4K display, or if you have a gigantic screen and use the monitor from far away, but you don't need it really if you have a normal monitor or a normal PC. Then the display resolution we can leave as is. It will be standardly the one of the monitor you are currently using. Same goes for the display orientation. If you don't turn your screen, you don't need it. Next is the advanced display, the refresh rate and so on. The only thing here is that you should adjust this on however many hertz your screen has, so we don't need it really right now. The same goes for the rest. The graphics are obviously by standard. Next, we'll go into position of screen indicators, volume, brightness, and other controls. And it is really not that important. It is about the little notifications appearing down here. Then we can go into sound. Into sound, I'd always suggest using the standard version right here. If you want to have a voice changer, you can add it here, adjust the volume. You can adjust if the audio is mono or not. Mono would mean that the right and left ear portray the same. It doesn't matter for most people. Same goes for the input. When using voice changers, you can fiddle around here, but it doesn't matter really that much. I'd actually use my current USB condenser microphone as the default device and not for communication because it has higher quality, of course. Now it is the default device for everything. I also have a microphone on my headset, but I'd suggest if you have a standalone microphone, always use it. Not the native microphone of your monitor. Some monitors have it, or of anything else. Always put this to 100 and the rest right here doesn't matter. Next, we can go into notifications. We don't really need all of that except for if we get a lot of notifications. The power is really interesting, but we don't really need it. There is some energy recommendations you can do to save power, but for example, turning off HDR is good and turning off your screensaver is good, but you don't need that, especially if you're a gamer. You don't need that if you like to be AFK for a while. Same goes for this. Here you can adjust how long the screen takes until he turns off. I like to set this a little bit higher to not make my PC sleep by accident, but we'll later install software to control this way better. Always leave it like this, that the power button shuts the PC down. Especially if your PC has some problems, this is kind of important that you keep it like that. Next, we have the storage. The storage is something most people never look at. It basically tells you how many temporary files you have. You can deinstall or delete all of them in most cases. How many space your apps take up, and you can clean up here with the recommended settings. You can clean up your recyclable bin, which is the place deleted files go through temporarily before they are getting fully exterminated. I would suggest enabling the storage sense because it runs when disk space is low. It automatically cleans up some space to help your system run at its best. But if you have a big drive, it is irrelevant to you. The advanced storage settings are also mostly irrelevant because of backups and so on. You can fiddle around here, but as a normal user, you don't really need it. Next is the nearby sharing. You don't really need it, especially if you don't have more than one Windows device. If you have a laptop or something like this that you regularly work on, it is interesting, but I personally never used it. Multitasking is interesting because you control how Windows resize. For example, when I drag this around, this white bar up here appears, and this is for multitasking. In this way, you can resize the windows as you like to have multiple tasks on your PC at once. But for my likings, you can also press the Windows button and move it around like this. Windows button plus the arrow keys. You can even move it around the two screens. You don't see it, but I see it, and it is very nice. Continuing. Also, if you press Alt and Tabulator, you see all of your windows. There's also something interesting. But I would actually put it to 20 most recent tabs, because then you can move around mostly all of your tabs, not just 3, which would be really annoying. For example, if we open up a few more Microsoft Edge tabs like this, or Windows, this way, oh, you actually can. Weird. Next thing. Now we are getting into advanced stuff. This is not that important. For example, if you right click, you can end tasks and all tasks. I would leave it enabled. It isn't that important. For the file explorer, I would always show the file extensions, but also show hidden and system files. I really like that because it gives me more control over what I actually see. Then I would also always turn this on. For the non-technical people, I wouldn't turn it on, but for the technical people, because then you can really see where something is stored and not just these simple tabs. For example, right now it looks like this, but if I refresh or actually reopen the thing, you would see this right here. Not that great if you don't have any data on the drive, but you would see the whole path. This is not important, and this is, I would enable it. It is also not that important. For example, what is this? I don't know. Then you should also, I think, disable long path, enable max path limitations from Windows. It is especially nice when you wipe code and the program accesses files and creates new ones. This basically removes how long file names can be, or path names. If you store a bunch of folders within one another, it can get messy, and the file handle right here can get too long. However, if you enable this, it doesn't have that problem. You don't need that much, and you don't need virtual workspaces that much. The terminal I would always leave like it is, and the PowerShell I would also leave it like this. You don't really need sudo because it makes the execution longer. Sudo is interesting if you do a lot of stuff in the console and you don't really know what you're doing to revert operations. And we are not developers. We don't need this, we don't need this, and we don't need this. Nice. Then we can go into activation. I've activated my Windows already because I had it installed on my motherboard. But if you need to activate your Windows, you can do it here. Or you can upgrade to Windows 11 Pro, though I wouldn't really suggest it for most people. Next, we have Next we have troubleshooting. I would leave everything as is here. And same goes for this. You can reset your whole PC here, by the way. Then you can use remote desktop, but I don't really use it. It is when you want another person to access your PC, for example. For grandmas, it is really nice, but you have to download a bunch of stuff and set it up. This video is not about that. The clipboard settings are also interesting. Save multiple items to your clipboard. Always enable this. This is really interesting. If you say Windows and V, then this appears, and all of your history of stuff that you copied appears here. For example, if we go to a tab and copy this, and then copy this, and then press Windows and V, right here, right down here, your history will appear. And if you click on something else, you can paste it. Same goes for emojis that you can paste also here. But this is other settings as far as I know. If you need to clear your clipboard data, you can clear it here. And if you have this thing enabled, Windows can basically see what you copy. But since they invade most of your privacy anyways, I wouldn't care about that. Use Linux if you want to be private. Next, there is system components. We don't need that. I would leave it like that. And then we have AI components. We just uninstalled most of them with the cleanup. And optional features, we don't really need. We can view them. And there is a bunch of stuff, but we don't really need it. Math Recognizer is really interesting. Notepad is interesting, but we already have it. You can install a bunch of stuff there. That is it with the system. Next, we'll go into Bluetooth and devices. Here you can connect your printer or other devices like mouse pads, keyboards, pens. Mostly they are connected via Bluetooth, but I don't have a Bluetooth stick with me right now. It is disconnected right by my mouse, so we won't go through that. In most cases, I would suggest using cabled hardware anyways, because it is faster, cheaper, and better. For the printers, there's always Microsoft Print to PDF, but we don't need it. And you can add printer devices by clicking on here. This, for example, is my printer. So I would add it as the standard printer. Now, whenever we are in Word, we can print stuff. It is taking some time to connect. So in the meantime, we can go onto mobile devices, but this is mainly for Android, so I don't really use it because I have an iPhone. Then you can set up your cameras here, but I don't have one. Your mouse, like the primary mouse buttons, the pointer speed, how fast it moves around. However, I have DPI settings on that. For example, like this, it moves around really quickly. And like this, it is really slow. I'd always keep it in the middle. 10 is the middle. I'd leave this on. This is interesting. I'd leave it like that. And I'd leave it like that. I'd also leave it like that. Let's continue. So if you only use the PC for office applications, you can leave it on. But if you are a gamer or a competent person, please leave it off, because basically what it does, if you move your mouse slowly like this, the movement is not that fast as if you move the mouse pointer fast. If you turn it off, the mouse pointer is fast at all times, even in the small steps. It is important for one-to-one inputs. Then we can continue. All of these are just related settings. With the keyboard, you can here type a bit. You can change the delay of how long it takes until characters repeat, how long you have to hold down stuff. I'd leave it like that. Some people make it shorter, for example, like this, longer in this instance, or like this. I'd leave it like that because I don't really do it that often. And then we have the character repeat rate. I'd not leave it slow because then it is really slow. Leave it as fast as possible. Then there are keyboard keys that you can customize. For example, if your keyboard has some extra buttons with which mine doesn't, you can customize them to whatever you want. This is also interesting for using a second keyboard which has buttons that your first one doesn't, as a Steam Deck, for example. The print key to make screenshots is something I would leave as it. For example, I can make a screenshot like this. Then, continuing onwards, I don't use a pen or Windows Ink. It is not that important. Then autoplay is also not that important for most people. Same goes for USB notifications and settings. If you plug in your USB, you'll have a little notification right here. I'd leave that enabled. Next on is, I think, the network and internet. Here you can configure your Wi-Fi, but my computer is connected via Ethernet. Here you can connect a bunch of stuff, and I just leaked my IP. Don't leak this, never. Same goes for the VPN. You can add in VPN connections here. However, I don't need all of that. Here, I would also leave it as is, because this is a bunch of technical stuff. Dial up is also not that important for regular PCs. Same goes for advanced network settings. Now we will go into the personalization. Here you can choose a theme to apply, for example with the background. You can use Windows Spotlight, giving you a image of nature Windows chooses. There are also, this is something else. And then when we go into colors, we can change also a bunch of stuff, for example to seafoam or whatever. It is for these little notifications at the bottom of the screen. We don't really have one, but I like to keep it as the standard automatic. Then transparency effects are also nice to have, and I like to keep my windows in light mode and my browser in dark mode. Otherwise it looks like this. It also looks nice, but because I record a bunch of tutorials, light mode is better. Then we'll go into the themes. This is not that important. I like this theme. It really looks professional and nice. That is why we'll keep it that way for later. But now we'll use actually use this. I think it is the coolest. The sounds will be kept the same. Same goes for the background and the color. However, the mouse cursor, I really like it to be green, because green is easier to spot on your computer. You can also adjust the size, but this is something for later. Then we can go out of this, because we have went through most of the stuff. In the apps, we can see all the installed apps, which are not that much. Advanced app settings is for giving them some permissions and archiving them and so on. The default apps are for customizing which opens what. For example, the media player opens all of these files like MP4s, MP3s and so on. Same goes for the whatever. Microsoft Edge opening hyperlinks, you can change this to not open.pdfs, but something else. The actions are not that important, especially if we don't have any apps installed. And the offline maps are also not installed since we don't carry our computer around. This is interesting because there you can download apps that you would normally use in your browser to your PC. For example, right now, Outlook. The same can be done for YouTube, and Netflix works in the same way, but we don't really do it. Although, no, the Netflix app theoretically doesn't work one-to-one like that, but it has the same working principle. Misinformation alert there. Next is the video playback. It is also not that important. We don't need that to enhance it automatically. This is a really bad setting to turn off. Same goes for this. So just leave it as is. And for the startup apps, I would have as little as possible apps right here. But this works especially if you use Microsoft Edge as your browser. Though if you want to be more private, I would suggest using at least Firefox, something which is not Chromium based. Chromium meaning anything where the basis is built by Google. And then we have Resume. I would only basically enable it for apps that have something to do with backing up or silently recording your screen to do, but nothing else. Something like antiviruses also appear here sometimes. Doesn't matter. Next is the account. You can log yourself in here. Here you can change everything about your Microsoft account, like your profile picture, your sign-in options, the linked devices, your family. Especially if you have kids, you can do a bunch of stuff here to restrict them from using stuff. Passkeys are also interesting, though I would suggest using other apps for that, like Bitwarden. The time you can adjust right here. I'm located in Germany, so it is for Germany, though I don't want my time zone to be US, so I can change it as I want. For example, I can be in Central Europe, Brussels, Berlin. And here we have the right time. It's noon for me right now. Also, right here, some see the American date format. It is somewhere else to adjust it. The adjusting for daylight saving time is important to keep enabled. It is for when the summer time switches to winter time and the other way around. And I like to change the time format to be like this, which is pretty weird right now. And this like this, because in Germany we note it down like this. This is okay, but I like to keep it like that. And for the long time, I like to keep it like that. Or is this better? Nah, I'll keep it like this. This looks best. Then we'll quickly go through the rest. This is not important. This, oh, is it? It is not really. And we can go into the language and region. I would always keep this in English because you learn the language this way, but you can also change it. For typing, I have a German keyboard, so I have German installed. Otherwise, you can use a bunch of other stuff in other ways. For the Windows apps that you might configure in your language, I like to keep it English. So we'll change that right here. Weird that it doesn't show up. Maybe US America, US States. Though for games and stuff, connecting to servers and something like that, it is better to keep it to your local country, I think. We don't need this. We already went through this. Next, we can go into typing, touch keyboards, and so on. If you have something like that installed, you can do it, but I don't really use the rest of it. Autocorrect misspelled words is interesting. It is not that important. And then speech. I always like to speak English with my computer, but you can change it to your native language. Same goes for other stuff like recognizing non-native accents. And the computer speaks to you in can be adjusted for speed. I like to have it high, but I don't even use the setting. Nice, then we are through that. Next we'll go into gaming. We don't need that. Windows G is interesting if you press it. You don't see it on my recording right now, but there is an overlay to capture gameplay, to adjust the audio, see the performance, and do a bunch of settings. That is not important. Though what is important, what I would recommend is to change this to downloads, where the clips are being saved. And you can actually adjust it somewhere. It doesn't really matter. Leave this off. This is, for example, if you play something where there is a lot of RNG based stuff. This is basically like a dash cam for your car, but for your computer in this instance. I'd leave it off. Same goes for this. I would leave it at 2 hours, except for if you record something taking more than 2 hours, in case of you forgetting to turn off the recording. But if you record something longer than 2 hours on regular, I'd suggest using OBS. Same goes for this. Leave it on. It is for recording the game audio and everything else. The recording should be in 30 FPS. I'd recommend it because 60 FPS draws a lot of processing power, and if you need to record in 60 FPS, please use OBS. The cursor can also be captured. Then the game mode should also always be turned on, because if you game, you don't want background processes to ruin your performance. And then we can go into accessibility. This is quite important for older people. I like to keep my text small, but you can also make it larger if you have bad eyesight. This also improves your posture, because then you don't have to go as close to your screen for viewing everything, but you can go further back, improving your posture. Then there is the visual effects. Scroll bars are important to show only if necessary, so we don't need them every time. Same goes for transparency effects and animation effects. I just use them. They don't cause any FPS drops normally. If you really want to not have them, you can turn it off. It gives you some performance boost, but it is not that relevant. The mouse pointer I would leave like this. This is my custom setting for it. The inverted stuff I don't really recommend. I don't really recommend the black thing, even though it kinda looks cool. Or the inverted thing, which I can show it right here. If I hover over black, it has other colors, but it is kind of confusing, so I leave it at a color one can easily recognize. For the girlies, use pink, for others blue, but yellow and green are scientifically the colors which are perceived the fastest. You can also change the pointer image right here, but this is advanced stuff. So for example, if you want your mouse pointer to be an image of the favorite football team or whatever that you like, you can do it here. After this, we have the shadow of the mouse pointer, that it has a little shadow if you really zoom in on it. But I always keep it off because it is unnecessary, has extra processing power. Same goes for the contrast. You don't really need it. You don't need it. It is like, I think, for older people to track it better where the mouse pointer is. But for me, it would be confusing if I'm moving around fast and my eyes would have to concentrate on multiple mouse pointers. This right here is interesting for the tutorial guides, but I don't use it. It is mostly for elder people. If you press Control, then there is an arrow appearing on your screen, but it is kind of buggy, so don't use it if you don't have bad eyesight. This is, I don't know, not that important. And we can go into the next setting, which is the text cursor. It is how stuff is being highlighted, and weirdly it is set to a interesting color. Normally it is blue for me, but because earlier I set the eyes color, it has another color. Doesn't matter, I like it. Same goes for the size. If you make it really small, the highlight is not as big as if you highlight like this. So let's just keep it at the number 3. And the text cursor thickness is also not that important. You can adjust it here. I like to keep it at 1. The text cursor blink rate I would also keep at the standard pace, because it would slow down if you make it slower like this. The problem here is that it is hard to find, and having it really fast is kinda hard. So keeping it exactly at, what the fuck, 50% is the best way to do it. Nah, doesn't matter, 51% or 50%. Next is the magnifier. This is only for really old people. And basically, if you use, I think, the Windows logo and the plus, you can zoom in. For example, like that. Plus, 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 and minus probably. You can zoom into stuff. This is really helpful for people with vision problems. You can zoom in as far as you want, and you see a bunch of, wow, interesting stuff happening, but I really don't need it. So we'll zoom out, turn it off, and here you can do a bunch of stuff. Smooth edges is something I'd recommend, because it makes the edges better. The rest is pretty much irrelevant. Especially when working with some editing programs that use similar key combinations, I wouldn't use it. Next. Also, it requires processing power to have this thing running. Next, the color filters. This is for colorblind people. You can, for example, adjust it to the grayscales if you don't want to use your computer. You can also adjust it to blue-yellow stuff, red-green stuff, depending on which color deficiency you have. You can also make it inverted on both the grayscale and the normal scale. It is really cool to see this on the Explorer and the tabs. For example, the mountains right here looks really cool, but we don't really need it. So we'll turn it off, and you can also turn on a shortcut for that. It is something a lot of guys have set up on their phone to make scrolling Instagram and TikTok harder, but on the computer you don't really need it, except for if you have an addiction or, of course, color blindness. Next we have the contrast themes. It is not that important. You can use aquatic, none, dusk, night sky. There's a bunch of stuff, like night sky looking like this, or dusk looking like this. I think this actually looks pretty nice. Aquatic looking like this, but we don't need it. It is for people who can't perceive contrast properly, and it takes some processing power away from your PC, because it is probably emulated based on the normal picture, I think. Don't rely on what I say. Don't need this. If we press Alt, Shift, and the print button, let's see, we can enable high contrast, but we don't need it. Next thing is the narrator. This is really funny if you turn it on.
Setting narrator updates window. Next button. Page 1 of 4. Narrator window. Exiting narrator.
It basically narrates everything you do, And I would even turn this off because you sometimes could turn it off by accident and then don't know how to turn it off. So the narrator is cool for people who are, for example, blind or who are really old, but you don't really need it if you are a normal person. You can, of course, choose the voices, add natural voices, legacy voices, and so on. There's a lot of stuff. You can control here the verbosity, the mouse and keyboard. If you like type on your keyboard, that the narrator says it if you are visually impaired. Also, there is stuff to use Braille for blind people, but since you hopefully aren't visually impaired since you watched this video, we don't need it. For the hearing, we can also adjust a bunch of stuff like mono audio. If you hear bad on one ear, I would suggest turning it on. And if you don't hear anything, you can turn this on, but we don't need it in this tutorial probably. Same goes for the hearing devices and captions. It is for people who can't hear properly, but they are pretty much self-explanatory. Same goes for this, the interaction, the voice access, where you can, if you can't type with your hands properly because you don't have two hands, or the mouse and so on. You can also control your computer with the eye, I guess. There's a bunch of stuff you can set up, but I personally don't use it. And most viewers watching this also don't use it. Next is privacy and security. I would always turn the virus and threat protection on. Same goes for the account protection, firewall, and so on. It draws a bit of processing speed, but I think it is important that you have at least something. Though I would not recommend downloading an antivirus which is external, because some of them are bugged and Windows security is pretty good in general. Then here you can adjust what apps and so on can do. I'd leave it as is because it is not that important. Next is Find My Device. I have actually turned these location settings off because I don't want Windows to know exactly where I am, or rather Microsoft. The same goes for online speech recognition. I don't want it to use my voice, so I leave it off. Same goes for inking and typing personalization. We don't need it. And for diagnostics and feedback, we also don't need it. This is, I think, all of these are some invasions of my privacy. This is, you can leave this on because you can find stuff quicker, but I would normally turn this off. We can turn this off, and we can leave this on if we have a laptop, but we can also turn it off theoretically. Just turn it off. Always leave it as classic. Don't leave on enhanced because it draws a bunch of power. And here you can exclude folders that you really want to keep private from your search results. So, for example, I have a bunch of drives. I want to leave my backup drive, which is it? I think this is my backup drive. I want to leave D out of these file search results since I don't want Windows to fiddle with this drive. Here you can choose a bunch of permissions, like the location. The camera shouldn't know your location, of course. And you can leave it as is, but please don't turn off on this. This is dumb. For the camera, I don't have a camera logged in, but you can turn it off if you don't want people accessing your camera, though I would suggest putting a piece of tape over your laptop camera or having a physical slider so no one can spy on you if you don't want it. For the microphone, I don't really fucking care which app uses my microphone because there is always ways to spy on you. You can turn it off, but if you really want to have privacy, just unplug your microphone when you don't need it. For the voice activation though, I would leave it off because some apps steal data from you. This way, if you have a Siri or apps using this, like Alexa, you can leave it on, but I don't like to have it on because it's always listening for voice activation words, but it can be exploited. For the notifications, I leave them on. Doesn't matter. But I'm a person who doesn't care that much about privacy, so the same goes for most of the other stuff. Next is the Windows update. You can check right here for updates if you have any. We checked today, so we are up to date. That was the settings. Now we'll look into which apps to install. Great. So here's already a bunch of stuff I want to install later. What we'll do is open up this and go through it one by one. Because I might make this into a bunch of other videos, I'll always say how to install ... Before we download all the apps. How to debloat Windows. So first, all you want to do is open up your terminal. Open it up as an administrator. Click yes. And then you're gonna type in IWR minus USB Christus, sorry, not Christus, but christitus.com. Then you want to do /win, then press enter, and it will do some stuff. It will load, wait a minute, and then it will open this. You can do a bunch of stuff. You should go onto tweaks, and there you can customize your preferences. For example, the dark theme for Windows, Bing search in start menu, which we don't want, numlock on startup, which we don't want, the verbose messages during logon, we don't want that, recommendations in start menu. I kinda think it is not that bad. And all of the other stuff, remove settings homepage, we don't want that, snap window, we want that, snap assist flyout, snap assist suggestion, we want all of that. We just went through the settings to set all of this up, but we can also turn this off. This is interesting to have not the taskbar centered right here. And that's about it. That's all the important stuff. Then I would also turn on this. This is if you have a blue screen of death, you will have more information, and the rest is okay. Okay, you can just basically click on here and have most of the stuff. Creating a door point is very interesting. Deleting temporary files is very interesting because it saves you a lot of space. Disabling consumer features is also a good thing. Disabling telemetry is essential. Same goes for activity history and a bunch of stuff that you don't need. Though I wouldn't disable the hibernation. So what we'll click here, I'd leave this on because using macros or having RGB on your Razer products is good. We'll skip this because we don't have Brave. We use Edge. We shouldn't disable Edge because we obviously use it. Though for the more technical people, I'd suggest using Brave or Firefox. The background apps I would enable, and not in every case, because if you close down an app, you actually want it to close down, but I think this feature also stops OneDrive and so on from working in the background, so it's kind of a two-sided coin right here. The full screen optimization, this can fix stuttering in some games, but breaks Alt-Tab speed, because I would not use it, especially if you tab around a bunch. A disable IPv6 thing, I wouldn't disable, except if you have specific network issues. The same goes for Teredo. but you can disable Microsoft Copilot because no one actually uses it. You can disable the storage sense because I wouldn't disable it because old files automatically get deleted, old temporary files, not your old baby photos, but like temporary files from video editing software and so on, logs and proxy media, I think too. The disable Windows platform binary table, I wouldn't disable it. Then the edge deep load, I would do it. The disable notifications tray calendar, I wouldn't disable it to still get notifications. As a normal user, I think this is highly recommended even because we don't have this whole shopping sidebar and this MSN news loading. I really like this. We do not need to prefer the IP6. We do not remove all IPv4. We do not need to remove anything. We do not need to remove home from Explorer, but we need to remove the gallery from Explore because it is really useless in my opinion. I think here you can, I think this is a very personal preference. Then we can get into the set display for performance. I wouldn't use it, it is not that important. And for laptops, this is very good. That when you close the laptop, it is just hibernating and not actually shutting down. Though for PCs, I like to turn my PC off at night and have the assurance that probably no one is listening to me. And then this is something interesting because it has some caveats. I like it because when you right click somewhere, only this shows up, which is really fucking bad. But if you go into more options, you have the classic right click, and I think it is way better because you have faster options. It actually does something, and especially if you right click on this, I don't always want to click on show more options. I rarely use these options anyways, and yeah, no one uses most of them. You can always use this. And we don't need to do the rest. Then we can click onto this and choose Cloudflare. I think is the best because it is the fastest. This one is slower, and I think then we are done. Or do we have anything else left? The apps list, of course. For the browsers, all of this I would install separately because I want to make a bunch of more tutorials about it so that I can install everything manually. However, you can basically select Firefox and Brave and Edge as backups, ungoogle Chromium or Thorium and LibreWolf is something I would say is really good for privacy hardened stuff. And LORP or the Zen browser, these are really new and customizable browsers. They work on the Firefox space. I wouldn't install them, but I've heard really good things about the Zen browser. For the communications, I'd suggest installing Discord, the Zoom, Teams, or Slack stuff if you are in uni or need it for work. Signal, Telegram, and WhatsApp. I would install all of them because they are really good messengers. Telegram is really nice for private stuff, and WhatsApp basically everyone uses. Juterino is for advanced Twitch chat stuff. I wouldn't use it. Twitch is a streaming app, and something like in the development stuff, Git, I'd always install. Same goes for GitHub Desktop, VS Code, Python 3, Miniconda, Notepad++, and Docker Desktop only if your studies or whatever require it. Goo.engine is for game development. I wouldn't use it, especially if you have Blender, Unreal Engine, or Unity. For the documents, the Adobe Acrobat Reader, is something I wouldn't use. I'd rather use something like PDF24 or Edge for viewing and editing PDFs. The PDF24 creator is another good tool. It is the PDF thing with the sheep. LibreOffice is something you can use if you don't have Word. I'd recommend it highly, but since I am a Word native and used PowerPoint my whole life, I have it. Obsidian is good for note-taking, though I use personally Notion for it. And Zotero is a citation manager. This is interesting if you write stuff. Then we have, with the games, Steam. Epic Games Launcher is something every gamer basically has. EA app and Ubisoft Connect and GOG stores are something that not everybody uses, but some games require it. Same goes for Playnite and TCNO Account Switcher. The TCNO Account Switcher basically switches your Steam or Epic Games account faster. You probably don't need it as a casual gamer. For the Microsoft tools, PowerToys is something I would definitely get. It is fucking good. Oh, I shouldn't swear in this. It is for system utilities like fancy sounds or a color picker. So I would definitely recommend it. PowerShell 7 is a newer command line. I personally don't use it, but you can install it. Visual C++ is something I would definitely install. It fixes the missing DLL error, so you don't run into that many issues when playing games that include gaming libraries from 2015 to 2022, I think. So you can just install it. The sysinternals are professional admin tools. I don't use them. You probably don't also use them, so don't download them. The multimedia tools are very interesting if you like to record stuff. Audacity is for audio recordings. I personally don't use it because I use OBS for my audio recordings, but you can always get it. It is really great software. Blender 3D modeling is also really fucking nice. Fuck, I shouldn't swear. It is free and you can model anything in there. Even professionals use it sometimes, and it is getting integrated into even, I think, Hollywood in some ways. GIMP or Paint.net are for editing images. I don't really know GIMP, to be honest. I only used it in school 10 years ago, but it is a free Photoshop alternative. I use personally Krita for editing a lot of my images, and for quick edits I use Paint.net. So pick one of them and install it. Next is OBS Studio. This is extremely nice for recording stuff, and I use it, just install it. Handbrake is a video compressor. I would install it. Same goes for VLC Video Player. It is, in my opinion, better as the Microsoft Player. For sharing screenshots and screen recordings, you can use ShareX, but I'd actually install it. It is better than the snipping tool. EarTrumpet is really nice for volume control. You can control the volume of each app individually. FFmpeg is a must-have because it is for the system backend for a bunch of video tools when animating stuff, when automating stuff. It is a must-have, and a lot of the bigger video players and editors actually also use the source code of it. It is one of these tools holding the internet together, for example. NDI tools is for network video. You can have it, but you don't really need it in most cases. The Equalizer APO is a system-wide audio equalizer. If you know how to tune your microphone and audio correctly, you can install it, but as a casual user, you don't really need it. For KDN Live /Shotcut, it is interesting. I wouldn't download it actually, because the same goes for Shotcut. These are video editors. And I think they are not as great as something like DaVinci Resolve. I use DaVinci Resolve for stuff like that. And YouTube DLP is something I would also get because you can download YouTube videos via the command line. I use it. Oh fuck, I have to cut this part out. YouTube DLP is good. Then there is the Pro Tools. If you unzip files, I'd definitely use 7-zip. Windows SCP is for transferring files, for example, to your website. I'll use this. But you don't really need it as a casual user. Same goes for Wireshark or Nmap. Only use this if you're IT professional, so I don't use it. Ventoy makes bootable USBs. I don't need it. You probably don't need it because you just installed Windows. And WireGuard or OpenVPN is interesting, but I don't use it. They are basically VPN tools. So this was all of them. There is more like utilities, 1Password, 7-zip and so on. You can look through them by yourself, but you don't really need it. Auto Clicker is something for Minecraft and Creepacks. If you want a video on all of them, I can make one, but you don't really need it. So what you're gonna do next is either install all of them with a selection here, get installed. I'll do it manually, one by one, to make a bunch of videos about it. And you can now run the tweaks. This will probably restart the computer and end my recording. It is running. And the system was restored successfully. Nice. It is setting up a bunch of stuff and setting up the Adobe block, some software policies, removing Copilot, running the disk cleanup. It is doing a bunch of stuff. You don't have to worry about it. It is now doing the stuff that you told it to do. Now something else opened up. We don't really need it. We'll cancel it. Now it is doing a bunch of stuff and setting it to manually or turning it off. All of this is really good. And now the tweaks are finished. Nice. Weirdly, the background picture is pink, which I don't know why it has that color. And now I quickly changed it back. What the fuck? I don't like pink, to be honest. I only like cherry blossoms. Pink and white work well together. This was it. Your Windows is set up. And now you can start doing your normal Windows stuff on it. For every software that you need to install, I have one video about how to install it. I would really like it if you subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a nice comment. This really helps me out because I wouldn't be able to make these videos any other way. I currently don't get any compensation for doing this. Thank you and have a nice day.